Nzaola, it's VJ, your brother from the ancient mother once again. Headspace album review. It's been a hot season. A lot of artists, noteworthy South African rap artists. When I say noteworthy, it's not some kind of hierarchy of bias, but I mean artists who are putting in the work and artists who are consistently trying to stretch themselves when it comes to the art by, number one, engaging with their audiences, and number two, engaging with themselves. These are the times, guys. And in the issue of engagement, in the issue of being in the times, the age, this very eerily apocalyptic era we live in, but isn't every era kind of apocalyptic in its own way? Anyways, in this end of the world and beginning of new other things, enter an artist called Tyson Sybateli. Used to go by Tyson ST. Not sure if that's a transition, not sure if he goes by both. All I do know is that he's part of this beckoningly intimidating PTA hip-hop scene that is beginning to develop amongst the new generation. Pretoria is not new to giving us fire bars and a commitment to an artist base who understands themselves, going back to the days of quote-unquote Cap City, with artists like
Anvils.
Thank you, Takeza.
Yeah.
You know, Hakeem Anderson and the crew that he came from, Ibafoza. Pressure Point. Goddamn it, we could name them. You should probably check them out. This is hip hop, South African hip hop history. Tyson Sybateli enters into the new fold. He's part of a newer generation, probably being led by the king of Pretoria hip hop, and silently the Ghana for maybe the king of SA hip hop, Aries. He follows in a stride that has been consistent with projects that pretty much still also lend themselves to this broader aura of trap music lyricism. He's basically within that context and storyteller, an artist who's pretty much puts his heart on his sleeve. So you could term him an emo rapper, but somebody with a bit of a street edge. His delivery is very aggressive and he carries a bravado that is enchantingly groovy to listen to. Reminds me a lot of US rapper Mavi. If you're familiar with him, working with an all sweatshirt and on navy blue, he's kind of got that eccentric and aggressive sonic texture, which is pretty much, as a hip-hop head, something that you like to listen to. We always talk about the rapper being in charge and in control of their own voice. Tyson is definitely in control of his vocal tone and texture and commands every joint from beginning to end. His latest project is called Home. I like this because as the Headspace, we have unapologetically been singing and preaching this gospel of what it means to understand where you come from as an artist. This notion of home is familiar yet surprisingly vague. What do you mean when you say home? Do you mean where you directly come from through lineage? Are we talking about some kind of mytho-poetic sentiment? Like, you know how they say home is where the heart is. Is home wherever your heart is? Because if home is wherever the heart is, then clearly a lot of the hearts of the younger generation are somewhere in Brooklyn or LA chilling, while their bodies are right here in South Africa.
Or in the south in Atlanta.
In the south in Atlanta, sipping lean.
Yeah.
While you're busy right here experiencing load shedding with all of us. But jokes aside, this is a very interesting epistemological kind of dichotomy where the body is placed in a locality, but the ambitions and the spirit seem to be aiming for something which is outside of the context of that. Tyson Sybateli ironically names the project Home, and yet it still sounds foreign, like every other project that is coming from a lot of this generation, from this new league of trap-inspired Ma 2000 rappers who maybe in a way are responding to the hyper-locality of piano by being hyper-international. Maybe this generation, Dakeza, is misconstruing locality with limitation. Maybe sounding like you're from South Africa to the ears of Generation Xers is something unattractive because they imagine you couldn't go far with it. They imagine that if you sound too much like you are from a particular place. If you can be located immediately, then it is more difficult for, I don't know, the global world to accept you, because we all know when we talk about global, we're actually talking about the West. So we're not even talking about the whole world per se. We're talking about countries in the world that have influential buying power in terms of the culture industry. And I want to actually speak against that. I want to say, when you understand where you come from and can extract the best parts of the experience of your surroundings and still be able to filter in these global nuances and how the world is inspiring you, you get to this incredible middle path where anywhere you go, the crowd responds to you with this enchanting sense of curiosity, because you will sound very much like something that they're used to, and yet there will be these secret codes about you that they couldn't decipher, because you come from this unique grounding point where you've used the DNA of your own cultural capacity to basically leverage a artistic power. What does this have anything to do with Tyson Sybateli? Tyson Sybateli's project is glossy, glistened with sheen. It sounds very much like an oscillating dream of fame. Here's an artist who wants to become big, who affirms his lyricism, who tells a story in a way that's very melancholy and melodramatic. A lot of sad boy raps, a lot of raps that are written from the place of despondency and engaging with your darkness. I appreciate that, because it's difficult to go to a deep down dark place. Most rappers would rather opt for the typical tropes about fucking bitches and bringing hot bars. He does that with an element of really digging deep into his own psychological baggage, and this album is really carried by the weighty psychoanalysis of his life and who he is. A lot of girl problems, a lot of rapper problems, a lot of politics in the scene, a lot of him just being a young man who is being given his props but is really just in the center of it all, trying to figure out who he's becoming. So maybe the idea of home anchors a question in Tyson's own head of where does he find his own inner peace within himself, because we underestimate how lost we can be within our own bodies. We underestimate the fact that you can't find physical home if you haven't found home in yourself. And I think one thing this project does really right is it kind of outlines the fact that home is first and foremost a journey of personally finding your own navigation, understanding where do the things that you like come from, and where do they anchor you towards, and how can you center yourself in all of that? How can your contradictions, your conflations, your nuances, and everything that you are come to a singular place where you can say, this is the package of what I am. And it's a growing package. It's an evolving form that's being reconfigured as I evolve as a person. But the one powerful thing that I'm going to start practicing and putting towards is learning how to accept that, because without acceptance, redemption or transformation cannot be possible. 12 tracks that basically coherently outline this this concept, and again, the theme is let down by the fact that through South African ears it sounds alienated. It really does sound like an artist who comes more from the American scope than from home. Yeah, there are references here and there spoken in Pretoria. There are ad-libs and lines here and there that kind of scream, oh yeah, I'm South African, so here's one or two references. But all in all, it doesn't weave together a cohesive idea of where home is for Tyson culturally. So I will say this is home in the sense of himself, and he still doesn't feel anchored in anything bigger than himself, which might be the problem with today's generation of artists. They do not believe that there's anything bigger than their own ambitions. They do not believe that you need to fit into the context of something greater that can help you work towards a greater ideal. It is not alone simply to be one person on a mission on your quote-unquote hero's journey into self-discovery. There must be guides, there must be history there in order for you to put perspective to where you're going, because you've ultimately understood and taken reference from people before you. So I'm going to give Tyson Sybateli's project an underwhelming 6 out of 10. I say underwhelming because I think an artist like him is capable of more. There are glimpses here and there of some individual greatness, but yet again this individual greatness is kind of suppressed by an overt belief in itself that is isolated from cultural context. He's not alone in this, but definitely I'm talking about him in this particular instance, that home doesn't manage to go beyond the angst of a young man, the chip on his shoulder, the overtly confident textures of an MC who's still lost in the proverbial sunken place. 6 out of 10. My name is Viwe Joka, the brother from the ancient mother. I will be drilling this idea of authenticity in your heads until you kind of understand where we're coming from with this. Shout out to Tyson Sybateli. Shout out to the Pretoria hip-hop scene for giving us artists who are dedicated to pushing rap forward constantly. It's the Headspace. Please subscribe. Let's do it again.